My name is Kandyce Young, Senior Technical Product Manager for Data and Environment. So as a product lead for all things data and environment, I want to take you through some things that we've been working on. But first, you may be wondering, what is data and environment? And so I spoke about this with Deanne earlier today. Just to kind of wrap it all together, let's do a quick recap. It contains 3 standards and all of the programs, training, and supporting material within each. We've got PCI DSS, so that's the technical and operational requirements designed to protect payment account data and their environments. We've got 3DS Core, and that's where the authentication process takes place prior to the transaction, so that's the 3DS functions. And then we've got the Token Service Provider Standard, and that's for generating and issuing EMV code tokens, and it deals with the process of their environment. So as I mentioned previously, they certainly address different parts of the payments ecosystem, but their goal is the same, to protect the payments and the environment. So the assets and the environment that contains them. One via cardholder data, one via the 3DS authentication, and one via the tokenization process that contains all of those different components. And as Gina mentioned earlier today, next year we will be celebrating 20 years of PCI DSS. And so PCI SSC, but that also means 20 years of PCI DSS. But because we're experiencing that next year, that won't stop me this year from taking us down memory lane just a little bit. And before I talk to you a little bit about what's to come for PCI DSS in the future, I'd like to lay the foundation for where we started and where we are now, just before I get you into where we're going. So I don't know how many of you were working on PCI DSS back in 2006 when it started with the council. Any of you working on PCI DSS back in 2006? Oh, fantastic. Well, I'll reveal a secret. I was not. So I will share with a little bit of you who weren't also working on it in 2006, share a little bit about what was happening at that time. So we certainly know that the threat and risk landscape was very different. Payment data breaches were at an all-time high. We know that PAN was being used extensively throughout the payments ecosystem, often throughout the ecosystem in the clear. Threat actors were slowly becoming more sophisticated in how they were able to capitalize on that data and use it to exploit users and create fraud throughout. Payment fraud, so physical skimmers were certainly on the rise as well. E-commerce fraud was slowly becoming a lot more popular. And we didn't have protections or a plethora of protections such as WAFs or Web Application Firewalls to really help us out there. And there was no real standardized way for organizations to mitigate the likelihood and impact of these breaches. And that was until PCI DSS came out with the council in 2006. And so as I was doing a little bit of research into this, I decided, let me download the first version that the council published. And for those of you that started out on this journey within the last 15 years, it's going to be a bit of a shock. PCI DSS version 1.1 was a total of 17 pages. This here is the first page of the requirements. And what do you notice? No testing procedures, no guidance. Those are actually developed separately and kind of merged into later versions of the standard. And so for context, PCI DSS version 4.01, that's a little bit over 350 pages. So we've grown just a little bit. And why is that? Well, a lot has changed to get us to PCI DSS now. The number and complexity of requirements has certainly increased to reflect the evolution in the environment. The industry has evolved tremendously, but also our stakeholders have let us know that PCI DSS requirements certainly need to evolve. We received over 6,000 bits of feedback to get us to version 4 alone. So PCI DSS now is a strong foundational standard, the basis of many organizations' security programs. And many global organizations speak the language of PCI DSS. And that's certainly not more evident than being here in APAC. I mean, I can speak the language of PCI DSS. Everybody knows what I'm referring to. I go all around the world. It's the same understanding. But the threat landscape certainly is very different today. And in 3 key areas, where we've got increase in sophistication. So we know that modern technology has certainly accelerated industry's adoption of emerging payment account alternatives. We've got interconnectedness like we've never seen before. Virtualization or virtualized environments certainly have increased the amount of connections that we have, but the attack surface has certainly increased as well. And thirdly, we know AI. That was mentioned earlier today as well. There's so much we don't know yet about that, but certainly it's giving us a lot of different opportunities that we must certainly be aware of. And we're starting to see PAN, or the primary account number, being replaced in some environments by other fraud risk mitigation technologies, such as tokenization, dynamic data, authentication, and other kinds of data that we'll hear more about later on today and into tomorrow. So this certainly feels like we're on the verge of a bit more of a breakthrough, like back in 2006, when PCI DSS came out to solve a problem. We had PAN, and we needed a systematic or a standardized way to protect it. Now we're looking at how do we evolve and adapt to address these new challenges? And I'll tell you how we intend to do that. But first, I'll give you a little bit about what we're doing today to help support PCI DSS now. We've recently published a variety of guidance documents. As Dan mentioned earlier today, we've had a record number of guidance material that we've published for about e-commerce requirements in PCI DSS, so requirements 643 and 1161. We've got integrating AI into assessment, so how assessors can incorporate artificial intelligence in their assessment process. Looking at vulnerability management, so that requirements 6 and 11, how they merge together to support an environment. Authentication, so we've updated the multi-factor authentication guidance and into a broader authentication content, as well as providing a summary on that as well. We've also published a guidance document on cryptography to help support organizations kind of looking to enhance their areas in that. And finally, we've updated and added a plethora of new FAQs that you'll see available on our website. The latest blog post we published was on AI principles, so it helps organizations understand what they may do, must do, and should do when integrating AI into their payments ecosystem. And translations have certainly been added of all of those documents I mentioned. We recognize that we are a global community, and to support the understanding of the global community, we've made sure to translate all of the material that we've published this year. Never before has the Council translated so much of its content to support our global audience. And here's where you can find this guidance. So click this QR code here. It takes you right to the document library. You can sign up for the feed, and so you can be aware of when we're publishing this content. You can be the first ones to find out about it if you sign up. So back to the cliffhanger I left a little bit earlier. What are we doing with the future? So we know that increasingly, there's an acceleration of the industry's adoption of modern fraud risk mitigation technologies. We've got the use of EMVCO token, biometrics, and other things. And so we know that PAN, or the primary account number, will cease to solely define what it means to be what it means for a CDE, or a cardholder data environment. We've got an accelerated industry adoption of investments in secure payment technology, and the investments in the evolution of this risk mitigation technology. That decreases, because of this evolution, we're seeing a decrease in PAN in a lot of these environments. They're being replaced by, let's say, tokens, for example, of reduced value to fraudulent actors. In 2023, we saw that tokenized transactions accounted for 32% of all e-commerce payments. Cloud tokenization grew by 20% in 2023 as well. And that shows that shift towards SaaS-based security solutions. Individual payment brands are also noticing a swift uptick in their use of tokenization, and different regions all over the world are also expected to see these swift upticks as well into 2028. So with the prevalence of the payment account data that's decreasing in the environments, that trajectory is not decreasing the value of securing that payment environment. Environments may certainly have other types of sensitive data assets beyond PAN that may require security, because if they're compromised, it could still lead to fraud, reputational risk, loss of customer confidence, as well as some contractual challenges. So protection is certainly still required. But PCI SSC's mission is not changing, and it is up here. Our role is to enhance global payment account data security by developing standards supporting services that drive education, awareness, and effective implementation by stakeholders. So payments haven't slowed down. And in fact, based on a 2024 report, 791 billion credit card transactions took place last year alone. That's an estimated average of 2.17 billion per day. So led by our policy-setting executive committee, it's critical that the payment security continues to keep pace with this. And that's going to be in partnership with all of you. So I'll share with you the three key principles that we'll keep in mind as we look to evolve that. But first, let's get a little bit more into why. Why are we evolving PCI DSS now? Why are we looking to do that? What problem are we trying to solve by evolving it? Well, over the last decade, we know that there's an increased presence of secure payment technology, and that means a decreased presence of PAN in a variety of environments. This strong adoption has caused enhanced fraud risk mitigation technologies to really shift the security obligation and risk responsibility from the merchant upstream to the service provider. So through the use of this evolved type of technology. Simple and complex environments, security profiles are evolving, and security requirements are certainly evolve to align with that. We must be able to prioritize efforts based on risk and look at the different likelihood versus impact of different types of environments based on their complexity. Risk management considerations can be built in from the start because one size fits all that PCI DSS applies to now is not necessarily going to work for this evolved environment going forward. And even with the improved risk management, risk mitigation technologies, maintaining baselines of industry security practices, that remains essential to the safety and soundness of the entire payments industry. And thankfully, PCI DSS, in partnership with all of you, is uniquely positioned to provide these industry-wide frameworks for securing these variety of environments. So this is our why. And how we intend to do that? Well, we want to make sure that we look at these three key areas as we look to evolve it. First, responding to the industry demand. So we've had significant stakeholder feedback. We've got a variety of stakeholder groups, and everyone has let us know, hey, PAN is decreasing in certain environments where we must learn to evolve with it. So we're definitely looking to address the decreased presence of these static data elements and due to this evolving technology. And stakeholder engagement, so from you, will be critical to directionally influence how this evolves. PCI DSS and its supporting programs will need to evolve to support a more risk-based type of decision-making within the requirements for payment environments with limited or even no PAN. And thirdly, we remain committed to the principle that an entity's cost of compliance should never outweigh the security benefit that it provides. And so here, I'll share with you our key goals that we're working towards. So here is the end state that we're looking to achieve. This is where we're aiming to get to. First, to establish a baseline environmental security structure that's intended to secure sensitive payment account data elements and processes globally that are not solely defined by the presence of PAN. PCI DSS's mission remains the same, so now it's time to support the global payment environment as established by our executive committee to support more broad data assets than PAN. And we look towards our industry stakeholders like yourselves to help us figure out how to get there. We must provide organizations with the flexibility to apply security rigor to more objective type of requirements based on their risk profile and their own environment's risk appetite. And this includes giving the organizations the ability to adapt to changing technological environments without compromising security and without significant overhead to achieve it. Third, we must distinguish between complex and simple environments. This ensures that the responsibility for security control adherence is placed proportionate to the risk. So the organizations that are taking the risk or the organizations responsible for defining the required security controls. This includes developing a security program for simple environments based on the industry's prevalence of secure payment account technologies. We certainly have those, so we want to recognize that there are different types of environments that the evolved DSS must address. So simple environments, think of those as environments that typically, or today, meet PCI DSS via a self-assessment questionnaire. And think of complex environments, or those that typically meet DSS via a report on compliance. So stay tuned for more updates on how we look to evolve that concept. Third, we must provide a clear impact for entities that use PCI DSS validated solutions on their assessments. Are there scope reduction opportunities if certain tools are being used? Well, the evolved DSS will certainly provide that clear understanding, so an entity knows how the use of their solution helps to support the completion of a DSS assessment, to reduce that redundancy and additional work effort that may not be required. And finally, we must ensure that validation documents are optimized and modernized based on its function and its use in today's payments industry. So these are the 5 key areas that we are looking to get towards. And to achieve these goals, the Council recognized we certainly cannot do that alone. We've begun the process of engaging a variety of stakeholders in the payments industry on a variety of questions. And so they include questions like this: what's the best way to get there? So we've got the goals, and the stakeholders will help us understand what's the best way to get to this. We are going to continue to have conversations with many of our stakeholders like yourselves to help us understand the different paths that we can take to achieve this. What's the best time frame to get there? Pacing the industry appropriately and signaling what's to come at an appropriate time for the industry's evolution is certainly a key factor to us, so that we can set realistic expectations and help organizations meet the requirements in an appropriate time. And how do we provide, or how do we support the market for these changes? We recognize that PCI DSS version 4.01, those new requirements just took effect March 31st, 2025. So you've got to give organizations time to roll that into their systems, get an understanding of how these new requirements impact them. But we certainly want to make sure that we get that industry support right away. And I'll give you an example, if you'll indulge me here for a moment. I'll give you an example of why your stakeholder feedback is so important to us. So here's a scenario here. This is not PCI DSS related, so this is not a quiz or anything like that. This is a personal story I have. So I have a son, and he comes home one day. There's an app he has on his tablet, and so at school they track the progress of how you're completing this math work through this app. So he comes home and he says, "Mom, can you help me figure out how to answer this question?" And I'm like, he's 6 years old. I'm like, of course I can help you. I do PCI DSS. This is going to be simple for me, right? But based on the way the question was worded, this is how I answered it. Find the shapes. I clicked each line. There was a feature for each one. I click one per. Well, that was wrong. I tried many combinations. I even took a screenshot, and I sent it to all of my friends that had kids of similar ages. And I'm like, tell me what answer this is, because for some reason I cannot get a 6-year-old math problem. Well, we all had the same issue, until I considered, maybe there's another way to interpret find the shapes. Well, if we add the word all, find all of the shapes in each of the lines, well, I tried each of the combinations. I said, maybe there's a variety of things you can choose in each of the lines, tried it, and eventually it did work. But I can tell you, I was happier than my son when I got the answer right, because I was like, okay, I can actually answer a 6-year-old math problem. But this is a perfect example of how one word can make a huge difference in how you interpret things. And in security, we certainly shouldn't have to guess, because there isn't an immediate right or wrong answer. And often when you find out you've gone the wrong direction, it's too late to make that change. So PCI DSS supports all of the stakeholders all over the world in many different languages and many different interpretations. So the more perspectives that we solicit on the requirements, on the approach, on the timeframes, the more likely we are to get to the right answer the first time. And for those of you wondering, this is actually the right answer. So it was multiple for each of the lines. So I just want to leave that up there, because I tell you, there should be gold around this. I was so excited when I finally got it. But it goes to show the importance of each word could have such an impact on the final result. So our principal participating organizations, as well as our board of advisors, are some of the most influential companies in global commerce. 4 of the largest merchant organizations sit on our board of advisors, and we've got the top 10 global merchant acquirers also on our advisory board. These 10 organizations alone make up over 95% of card-based transactions in the United States alone. But there's also you, and there's also you, all of the different stakeholders, and we need to hear your insights. We think of each of you as EV stations, like there. We plug into each of you to get the electricity to propel us into the future. But keep in mind, this is the first time the Council has brought stakeholders in so early in the development process of a standard. The first time we've taken a fully baked standard and sought stakeholder input on the strategy for future development. And it's also the first time we've been so transparent about helping to develop the strategy with our different stakeholders from a geographical perspective, as well as from an industry type perspective. So the future of DSS, we will be able to say, will be shaped by this global collaboration. PCI DSS is a fantastic standard, and not just because I work on it all the time. It really is. And it's foundational to organization security programs. So the next step is to make sure that the Council continues to provide the industry with effective ways to secure their payment environments, recognizing these new risk management technologies, recognizing the evolution in secure payment account technologies. Payments have gone beyond PAN, as you'll hear today and tomorrow. So PCI DSS needs to go beyond PAN as well. So what can you do? Meet with us, meet with the PCI SSC staff. We're all here. Have some conversations with us about how ideas you may have to help us get there. Share these bold ideas, as Gina mentioned earlier. Bookmark PCISSC.org, because that's where you'll find the latest information that comes directly from the Council. And connect with others here. We are only as strong as our connections that we make during these sessions. And we're also joined by our love of payments. So join together, and together we can make these ideas, strengthen these ideas, and propel them forward. So PCI SSC, we are grateful for your time, for your expertise, and your commitment to securing global payment account data. So let's join together and create the future of PCI DSS together. Are you with me?